Maryland basketball can be a top 25 team next year.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bet when your first $5 bet wins. Maryland basketball has finally finished assembling its roster, and I think this Maryland team can be a top 25 team next year. I'm not saying Maryland basketball will be a top 25 team to start or at the end of the year necessarily is going to end up being a top 25 team. I think my take on how Maryland basketball's roster finished up, how Buzz Williams finished up this team, how he recruited this team, how he put the pieces together, I see no reason why this Terp team doesn't have the potential to be a top 25 team. I think this Maryland team varies in potential like a lot. I think way more than last year. I thought last year's potential was a Final Four, potentially maybe even a national championship. Like I thought we had that much potential, and as we got going, I honestly thought that. Like if we did everything exactly right, like I think we could have made a Final Four. But I also think last year's floor was pretty high. But I think this team's potential varies a lot more. I think it's a much lower floor than last year, like a much lower floor in terms of if the pieces don't quite fit right, if guys don't play at a level that we think they can play at or that we're projecting them to play at, and some of these different things. I think there's definitely a much lower floor, whereas last year we felt pretty good about Derek Queen coming in and being pretty good. We already had known Julian Reese had been really good. We knew Jacoby Gillespie was one of the top players in the portal. Maybe Rodney Rice surprised us a little bit, but even him we were pretty sure. Selton Miguel had been really good before. Like we felt pretty solid about a lot of the different guys, whereas this year there's more guys that have the potential to break out that aren't quite as known, that we haven't quite seen it at maybe a high of a level as we think that they could potentially hit, but they have shown flashes of stuff to allow me to say this team could be a top 25 team at the end of the year during the season. I think that's entirely possible. I think there's work to be to go on, but I just think Maryland has the pieces this year to be a top 25 team. I think one thing is the depth. I think that's what's going to lead us to be as good as I think we can be. It's going to be the depth. The depth this year it's pretty remarkable how Buzz Williams has built this roster. It's deep. There's a lot of different body types. There's a lot of different player types. There's a lot of different play styles. There's a lot of different guys from all over the place on this roster. And obviously, it's a completely new roster. But Buzz Williams did a pretty good job of making sure we're going to have 11, 12 guys that potentially could play. There's only a couple guys on this roster that I'm like, yeah, they definitely won't play. Like, there's not too many guys on this roster that I'm confident won't play. I think really the only guy I can say with absolute confidence, I'm pretty sure these guys won't play is Josiah Harper, the freshman. I don't think he'll play. And then I'm the Nick Blake kid, who's son of Steve Blake, who committed the other day. Didn't do a segment on him. It's a nice kind of pickup for Maryland. He's the son of Nick Blake, who is a Maryland legend, he's the son of Steve Blake, and who was a Maryland legend. So I'm glad that we added him, but he's not a guy that's going to be in a rotation. Josiah Harper, too, he's more a developmental guy. I think down the road can be pretty good. But other than that, I don't know who's going to be in the rotation. I don't know who plays. Even a kid like Gilmero Del Pino, I really just don't know. I don't know how good he is. He looks good on film, but does that look as good in college? Like, I don't know. And I think it's going to create an absolute battle between the guys. And I just think there's so many different body types. There's so many different play styles. There's so many different guys from different areas. that Maryland is definitely on track to be, I think, one of the deeper teams in the Big Ten. And deep teams win in college basketball. When you have a bunch of different guys that can do a bunch of different things, that wins. We've seen it last year. We've seen it over the years where teams have had guys that have just played, a lot, that have played different minutes and different styles. I always keep using Michigan State as an example, but there's been so many different teams like that have done some different things like that have played at different points in the entire season. Like there could be a guy that plays a ton at the beginning of the season, but at the end of the season doesn't play a ton, or vice versa. Like we saw that with Jace Richardson, the Michigan State guard. And I know I keep comparing to this Michigan State team. It's just recent and I think very applicable to us. Like there could be a guy like that. That could be our Darius Adams, where at the beginning of the season, he's good. He looks good. We know he's one of our better players, but by the end of the season, he takes on the starship. And I think there's potential for our team to grow into a top 25 team. I think at first there could be struggles, and I think at first it won't look like it. I don't think it'll look like it at first, but I think after a while, once we start getting guys in the lineup, once we start getting guys going, I think Maryland basketball will definitely start to look like a top 25, a top 30 team in the country. It's definitely going to take a while to sizzle. It's definitely going to take a while to cook, because that's what happens when you don't have as much confidence in 5-6 guys that you know are going to be really good players. And I just think that it's not going to be easy for Buzz Williams to find the lineup. I think a lot of people are predicting Miles Rice to start, Isaiah Watts to start, Solomon Washington to start, Elijah Sanders and Pharrell Payne, and I think that's entirely possible. But there's other guys that could fight to play as well. David Coy, Andre Mills, George Turkson, Darius Adams, all guys with Keys Passmore, all guys that you think could fight. And I think that the lineup's going to take a while to figure out. And I think the rotation, who you're going to play at what position, how many minutes guys are going to play, it's going to take a while. But I think the fun part about it, the exciting part about it that leads me to think this Maryland team can be a top 25 team potentially next year is that once you figure it out, once Buzz Williams has an idea of what he's going to do, once Buzz Williams figures out the play styles, who plays well here, who plays well there, what lineups play well together, who needs this minute, who needs more of a break here, who needs to be in the game late. Once he starts to figure that out, hopefully by the time, or maybe a couple games in the Big Ten play, I think the Maryland team is going to be a scary team to play, and a team that not a lot of people are going to want to see. I don't think a lot of people are going to want to see the Terps later on the season, because they're going to be deep for one. They're going to be well rested, and when it comes to the second half, it's not going to be like last year where I'm like, can Derek Queen finish this game out, or is he going to get fatigued? Or can Rodney Rice still have the legs to shoot? Or is he fatigued? Or can Selton Miguel shoot, or is he fatigued? And I think a lot of that times that happened last year, and then also foul trouble killed us last year. I think it really hurt us at times. And when Julian Reese had 2 fouls in the first half, you're like, dang, we're playing guys that we don't really like. Or if Rodney Rice picks up 2, it's like, we don't really have any other guards that can score. Whereas now it's like, oh, okay, we got Isaiah Watts picked up a couple of fouls. Oh, we have Darius Adams, a 5-star that can play. Oh, Andre Mills was a 4-star recruit. Oh, Rakeem Passmore was a top 50 recruit 2 years ago. Like, you have different guys that you can play. Oh, Elijah Sanders is out. Oh, Alex Austin was a 4-star recruit that can come in and shoot the ball. And I think that's exciting for the Terps. And there's just so many guys. There's a combination of leadership. There's also a combination of guys that have done it before, which leads me to feel pretty good about where the Terps are going to be at and how the Terps are going to come together. And I think that's really exciting for Maryland basketball. And then the people that say, I don't know if we're going to have the star power. I don't know if we're going to have those types of bodies to be a top 25 team. The guys at the top, like, we don't have some of these top end guys. I also think that's a fair argument to be said, but I just think there's some things where I talk about with Maryland football, there's some trial and error that goes on, that when you got 11, 12 guys that you feel pretty solid about playing, eventually usually 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 are going to break out and start to look really good for the Terps. I meant to add this in. I didn't really get a chance to, but we can talk about it. John Rothstein, who does his ranking, is really big in college basketball world, listed Maryland right now as the 34th ranked team in the country, which I think is fair. I said I think Maryland's potential to be a top 25 team. And that's where I got the projected starting five. And also, this is what people just been projecting. But they have us ranked as a 34 ranked team after kind of the window and where college basketball stands now. There's still a little bit more work to be done in terms of the portal and different things like that, and guys deciding what to do with the NBA. But that's kind of where I see us to start, and then I can see us entering that top 25 range once Buzz Williams figures out the lineups and the rotations and some of those growing pains that I talked about kind of get out the way. So that's kind of how I see the Terps. That's how I see the Terps coming together. But I think it'd be really interesting, and I definitely see a world where Maryland finishes as a top 25 team. I don't want to say for certain that's going to happen, but that's my take on it. I think this team has the potential to be that. Some things have to work out, and I think a lot of trust goes into Buzz Williams when you have a roster like this. Nobody's played together, but I do think it's something that can end up happening. So we'll see exactly what ends up actually happening for the Terps. I do think it's a possibility that we end up being pretty good next year and we end up being one of those top 25 teams. But we'll see exactly how it actually comes together. I want to talk about Big Ten coaching. Maryland's Mike Locksley fell down the rankings. We'll talk about that next and what that means for the Terps. We'll talk about that next. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moment. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. There's so many different things you can bet on FanDuel. You can do more than or less than on NBA player props, like tonight, OKC versus Timberwolves. If you want to take over Ant Edwards points or under a SGA points, whatever you want to do, you can do that on FanDuel. The MLB season is fully in swing. If you're a Maryland sports fan, if you want to do under on Gunnar Henderson hits, or if you want to pick the Orioles to win, or if you're a Nats fan and want to do James Wood over on hits, you can do that all on FanDuel. And, of course, hockey as well. If you want to bet the Oilers to win the Cup, there's so many different things you guys can do on FanDuel right now. If you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So there's been some really interesting stuff to come out, ranking coaches, and Mike Locksley dropped a lot in according to some articles in when they rank all the coaches in the country. And I kind of want to give my overall thoughts where I think Mike Locksley is. So I was reading this article, and it says that CBS Sports ranked Locksley as the 59th best head coach in college football. 19 slots lower than last season. While that wasn't a good sign for the Terrapin coach, Sporting News isn't high on Locksley in 2025 either. Bill Bender with Sporting News ranked all 136 head coaches for 2025. Locksley came in at number 55. That dropped him 25 spots from last season, where Bender ranked him 30th in the country in 2024. So basically, Locksley, these websites and these articles are saying Locksley's about a 50th, 55-ish ranked head coach in the country. And at a program like Maryland, at a Big Ten program like Maryland, you definitely want your guy to be higher than that. If you're gonna win games, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong, but if you're gonna want to win games, if you're going to do something in the Big Ten, if you're going to be a consistent bowl team, you 100% want to be higher than 50, 55, or getting into the 60s. And I do think that Locksley is a solid coach. I've started to have mixed kind of feelings about how he is as a coach. I do think this year is going to tell us a lot about Mike Locksley, because I don't even necessarily think the roster is better than it was last year. I think the schedule is so much easier, so I think that makes it a lot easier. But I'm curious how Mike Locksley is going to finish out. I'm curious how Mike Locksley is going to look because I don't know if I think the team is awesome, but to get into the ranking, I do think it's fair. I think after last season finishing 4-8, I think it's fair to drop Locksley to about 50-ish ranking. I think that's fair, to be honest. And to him to be ranked like 30th last year, I think that was fair. I think we were coming off 3 straight bowl games. Things were looking really well under Mike Locksley. I almost felt like we just were going to a bowl every year. I got to that kind of mindset where I was like, yeah, Maryland football, we're probably going to go to a bowl this year. Even looking at the roster and being, no Talia, no this guy, no that guy. Oh, we're a little bit weaker here. I was still like, I feel pretty good about Mike Locksley getting us to the bowl. I didn't think that Billy Edwards was going to be the quarterback. I thought it was going to be MJ Morris for a while, but Billy Edwards ended up winning that out. And I just think that last year, when you watched Mike Locksley, I just thought it was a poor job. I just did. I thought in terms of the offensive line, it was a really poor job. And I think that's a lot of what the ranking comes from. Locksley's an offensive head coach, and the offensive line hasn't looked good in a while. Has really never looked good. And that's annoying. It's annoying to never have an offensive line that's decent. We've been passing the ball way too much. It seemed like last year we got out-schemed a lot. There was a lot of games. There was a lot of times late in games where we just got beat based off of clock management, other teams doing a small thing right there, a small thing right here in fourth quarters that allowed us to not win some games that I honestly thought that we could have won. And so I think it was a poor coaching job last year. I thought guys weren't in position to win games. I just didn't think it was a great job, and you can blame some of that on the assistants and different things like that. But this would be a huge year. You get rid of some of the assistants, you get rid of some of the other stuff. You get some new players and different things like that. And eventually it's going to be on you. And that's the big thing coaches have been saying. And when we read the quotes the other day, it was Locksley, he recruits a lot of really good players. He gets a lot of solid recruiting classes, but when does the development come into play? And I think that's something you kind of start to wonder with Mike Locksley is you have a lot of good players, and at certain position groups, we see it. Like we see it at receiver. We see Ty Felton get a lot better. We saw Keenan Prather get better at Maryland. We saw Rakeem Jarrett maybe not develop into a 5-star type of guy, but a really solid receiver and to be able to play on Sundays. We saw that. We've seen that with the secondary. We haven't seen it much with pass rush. We haven't seen it with the defensive line. We haven't seen it much with the offensive line. In the trenches, we just haven't seen it. So you're like, okay, there's things that we kind of grown to expect with Locksley, but eventually you've got to be able to grow as a coach. And I think he deserves that ranking. And I've said it before. I've already said it. This wasn't my take today, but I already said it. I think it's a make or break year for Locksley. I think a lot goes down, and I think he really wants to get to next year because I think there's a lot of exciting pieces that are young this year for the Terps team that are going to be back on the team next year, i.e. Malik Washington. There's a lot. That freshman class brings in a lot of guys that you're going to be excited about for the next couple of years, mainly Malik Washington, but other guys too, that Mike Locksley is going to want this job. So I do think that he deserves to be ranked around the 50th-ish. I haven't seen a ton to say he should be above that right now. But I think he has work to do to prove us to get back into the 30 range. I don't think he's a top 25 coach. I think to get back in the 30-ish, I think he's got to do some work. So we'll see what can happen. Let's talk about some freshmen that I see making an impact. But these aren't the Malik Washingtons or the Jalen Gilchrist. Let's talk about some low-key guys that could potentially make an impact that we haven't really talked about. Let's talk about that next. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online, shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop mismanaging your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery, and now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever, and you can track shared and personal accounts and set goals and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Let's talk about Maryland's low-key freshman that I think can make an impact. Again, these aren't your Malik Washingtons or your Jalen Gilchrists of the world. That's not who I'm going to talk about. We all know Malik Washington at this point could end up being our most important player next year, could end up being our quarterback next year. I think a lot of people would tell you that. But I want to talk about some low-key guys that I think could potentially be really big for the Terps next year and really help the Terps win next year. So a guy I really haven't talked about a ton is Zahir Mathis, 4-star edge. I think he's going to be immediately put in the edge spot to potentially play. I don't think he's an early enrollee. I think that's why I haven't really talked about him. So he wasn't at the spring game and all those different things. But when he gets to Maryland in the summertime, should be coming up here soon. He's a guy that potentially could make an impact for the Terps. He's actually the highest rated guy on Rivals, on our Terps, on the Rivals ranking. Malik Washington's higher on the other websites, but I think he's a guy. I don't even know if he's low key, but I want to make sure I mention him because I feel like I haven't really talked about him. Kind of went to the back of my head, to be honest, but he's definitely a guy that can make an impact. I think another guy is Bryce Jenkins. I think we haven't talked a ton about Bryce Jenkins, but in terms of a defensive lineman with the size that can come in and should have the strength to come in pretty quickly and be able to play at a high level in terms of on the defensive line. It's not easy to come in on the defensive line and do some different things, but I think he can do it for this Maryland team, and I expect him to be in the rotation early on just based off of how big and strong and how much he fills up holes and different things like that. I definitely think he's a guy that potentially could come in. I'm hearing rumblings that Sidney Stewart, pass rusher, could potentially be something for the Terps from Towson, Maryland. Not necessarily super highly rated or anything like that, but just a 3-star solid guy, 6'3", 250. Potentially he could be a guy that does some things for the Terps. So that's something else that I think somebody else that I think could be interesting for Maryland. We'll see how that ends up panning out for the Terps, but definitely somebody that ends up doing some different things for Maryland. We'll see exactly how that ends up going for the Terps. And then I think Iverson Howard, I really like his game. I do think he's a guy that can get some touches early. We'll see exactly what happens with him, but I do think he's another guy that I'm like, Iverson Howard's an interesting running back. The running back room's kind of pretty open. He's a guy that potentially could do some things. So those are some of my low-key guys. You could also add in a guy like Zymir Smith. I don't know how low-key he is. I guess if I'm talking about Bryce Jenkins, I can talk about Zymir Smith. I still don't even know what they're supposed to do with Zymir Smith. I guess on the offense side of the ball, but I'm still kind of confused what we're supposed to do with Zymir Smith. Obviously, he's an explosive weapon no matter where you put him. He definitely helps the Terps. So we'll see exactly, but I do think he's someone that could help Maryland as well. So those are some of the low-key guys that actually could end up playing pretty quick. And I think I can see Maryland. I don't know exactly. I think Locksley, it'll be interesting because I do kind of think his job's on the line, but I can see him playing some of these guys early on. And we'll see how many of them actually end up playing, but I can guarantee at least 4 or 5 get in some type of role with the Terps. I definitely can see that. But that's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps.